what's good, cannabis investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from September 23rd to the 29th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos. Now, try to think of these videos as a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the U.S. cannabis industry. Identify top U.S. MSOs that you keep seeing pop up that you think will be worth more in the future than they are now based on their current market caps and new markets coming online like Pennsylvania and Florida. And take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so. Now move over July, as we're happy to recap. We've got a new record-setting month in the summer as Americans vote for legal cannabis with their dollars, recording nearly $2 billion in combined sales alone last month. And it's worth remembering 3 states will vote on the ballot this November. Florida, the biggest one since California, and then North Dakota and South Dakota again. Hopefully the governor allows the will of the people to reign supreme this time. Well, it's also worth noting Virginia has decriminalized cannabis, but no commercial adult use market, and not likely coming till 2026. However, Minnesota and Delaware should have new markets coming online in 2025, so that's something to look forward to. While below, we've got the full breakdown of the total sales for each state in August in alphabetical order. So of course, you can pause to read to go through those. Otherwise, all the links will be in the comments. Well, happy to report Maryland continues to succeed since launching for adult use last July of 2023. They continue to bloom with $100 million in August this past month, with $73 million in rec and $27 million in medical sales, putting the state on pace to beat the $1.1 billion in sales from their first year, which would reign from July 2023 to July 2024. Now, worth noting, from January 2024 to now, they've sold $755.7 million worth of cannabis, with an average price per gram of flower of $9.64, and total sales since the market launched last year, so July of 2023 to the end of August, it seems like, $1.3 billion. So lots of potential for them to continue to grow and exceed last year's numbers. Also worth noting, the state has also seen a major uptick in cannabis tax collections, the state comptroller reported. Now again, this can always be beneficial or it could be negative. It all depends on how those resources are redistributed, and so it's up to the people of Maryland to hold those city employees accountable. Up 52% from the first quarter this year to the second to $22.3 million. So love to see the benefits of ending cannabis prohibition work for themselves. While for a breakdown of the cannabis tax revenue surge in Maryland, big state gains, tiny local share, you can pause to read for a bit of a breakdown on where they plan to allocate those, at least in the near term. And so moving along to Florida, happy to share from Cannabis Business Times that support for Florida cannabis legalization measure now eclipses $100 million, in large thanks to Trulieve's contributions, outraising their opponents 5-1 in the nation's most well-funded legalization campaign. And so they say you got to pay to play in America. Money talks. Better fucking work this time around in November. All that to say that Trulieve has now contributed $92.7 million since the adult use legalization effort began in late 2022. While other main contributors to the pro-legalization campaign are found here: Verano $3.5 million, Curaleaf $3 million, Air Wellness $510,000, Green Thumb $500,000, Cresco Labs $403,236, and INSA $244,000. While this looks very promising, and we know that they've out-fundraised the shit out of the hemp lobby, all eyes will be on November, and ultimately in Kim we trust from now until then. So a bit more here if you wanted to pause to read. It is a long article bringing opposing sides together that can agree on at least ending cannabis criminalization and prohibition, because it never worked in the first place. But all the links will be in the comments. Well, thank you, Mike, at Curated Value, with another banger. If you're interested in Florida, he made a map of all Florida dispensaries, complete with the average daily vehicle traffic on nearby roads. So this is the link to it. It will be in the comments, though I opened it up quickly just to give you an idea of what it will show you. And let's say we zoom into basically any area in Florida and hover our mouse over the road, it will tell you daily how much traffic typically uses that road. And so on this side as well, you can either remove the average daily traffic count, or you can remove certain dispensaries if you just want to look for one dispensary. Either way, cool little resource, so thank you, Mike, for doing that. He says it may take some time to load, recommends using a computer, and then adds this visual down here highlighting the distribution of the number of competitor dispensaries within 3.5 miles of location in Florida. So another interesting visual just to look at, but the main thing is that Florida did not hold back in providing equal access to opportunity to the med market, and likely they're going to at least allow the same for adult use, and that's going to benefit everybody that's got a shop there, with the 21 million people that want to buy adult use cannabis. And so with that, Trulieve to open medical cannabis dispensary in Hudson, Florida, number 200 and something, and this one opened last Friday, September 27th at 9 a.m., and so good to see them continue to focus on what they can control, open up new shops, and prepare for the new future after November. Another banger from Curated Value, so thank you for the digging you do. Apparently, Green Thumb Industries is building out 6 more grow rooms in Florida. Not dispensaries, but cultivation facilities to properly supply the demand once they go adult use post-November ballot vote. So, document filed on August 6th. Take it with a grain of salt, but does look pretty official and legit, highlighting the description of improvement, interior build-out of 6 grow rooms and 2 dry rooms. Green Thumb in Florida as well. So take from that what you will. Don't think there was a link to it, unfortunately, but this guy finding great stuff to share with all of y'all, making my job easier. Well, lastly, from Verano announces the opening of Zen Leaf Arcadia in prime new Phoenix location. Yikes. I think the last thing any fucking MSO probably wants to do is open a dispensary in Arizona, given how that market's turning out. What could lead to good news for Verano is this is following up on the recent acquisition of Arizona and Virginia operations from the cannabis company, so one of the 2 dispensaries they get out of that deal, elevating the company's Arizona operational footprint to 8 retail locations and 90,000 square feet, bringing their total operations to 14 states, 152 dispensaries, and 15 cultivation and processing facilities. So more info here. If you're interested, of course, not as hot of a market as Florida to try and open up and expand in before the big adult use market flips, but of course, good to see them trying to make some moves that will help them in the long run. So some studies, we've got this first one from SpringerLink. It's actually an article summarizing a lot of findings, exploring the therapeutic potential of cannabinoids in cancer by modulating signaling pathways and addressing clinical challenges. Fresh off the press as of September 27th. So it's a long abstract I invite you to pause to read, but I figured I would take you through some of these more technical terms to explain what they mean and highlight how cannabis should have been descheduled 50 years ago because it is a medicine. So with that, cannabinoids including delta-9 THC, CBD, and CBG exhibit significant anti-cancer activities, such as apoptosis induction. What does that refer to? Apoptosis induction refers to the process of initiating programmed cell death through complex biochemical and genetic pathways. It is a vital mechanism in the development and maintenance of living organisms like us with endocannabinoid systems, aiming to eliminate unnecessary or unwanted cells for the balance between cell survival and cell death. Sounds like it gets rid of cancerous or deadly cells for you, which sounds promising. Autophagy stimulation. This next one, exercise, much like fasting, can also stimulate autophagy, helping your cells remove debris and function optimally. So it places a demand on your cells to produce energy and adapt to stress, leading to the removal of damaged cellular components and the recycling of cellular materials. Sounds very promising and like natural recycling that our body does. It's apparently helped by cannabis. While cell cycle arrest, the third one, what is this? Is the stopping point in the cell cycle where it is no longer involved in the processes surrounding duplication and division. Could be a good thing if it is a cancerous or harmful cell that is trying to duplicate or multiply. Next one, anti-proliferation, kind of speaks for itself, but if we replace nuclear weapons with cancerous cells, it makes a whole lot of sense in opposing cancerous cells from spreading and passing that cancerousness on to other cells. One way of putting it. Next one, anti-angiogenesis refers to a drug or substance or plant that keeps new blood vessels from forming. And why might this be a good thing? In cancer treatment, anti-angiogenesis agents may prevent the growth of new blood cells that tumors need to grow. Similarly, in line with anti-proliferation of what tumors need in order to succeed and take over your body. So that's also promising. While lastly, metastasis inhibition. Metastasis refers to the spread of cancerous cells from one part of the body to the other. So cannabis or cannabinoids effectively inhibit the ability to cancer cells to spread across the body, making the cancer potentially more harmful and deadly. What do you know? Clinical trials have demonstrated cannabinoids' efficacy in tumor regression and health improvements in palliative care, hence why we should have descheduled this plant decades ago to really research it and learn so much more than what we know now. However, challenges such as variability in cannabinoid composition, psychoactive effects, regulatory barriers like the unfortunate and unnecessary Schedule 1, and lack of standardized dosing remains. And so one day we will know all that we should know about this plant. We got this new study from Springer Nature as of September 23rd, 2024, cannabinoids as a natural alternative for the management of neuropathic pain, a systematic review of randomized placebo-controlled trials. And so quite a bit of info here in the abstract if you wanted to pause to read. A little bit more down here in the review. While compared to placebo, cannabinoids provided significant relief from chronic pain, 33% versus 15%. As measured by the visual analog scale, the transdermal application of CBD led to a more pronounced reduction in sharp pain according to the neuropathic pain scale, while minimal to no side effects were recorded, further highlighting the potential benefits of cannabinoids. The evidence speaks for itself. Of course, there's lots out there to muddy the waters, but I invite you to grab the links in the comments to go through that if you'd like. This one from PubMed as of September 2024 as well. Transepithelial transport in vivo and in vitro and anti-inflammatory activity of cannabidiol. So another kind of pointless study using animals instead of humans because cannabis has never killed a single human being. But I digress just to show you the details and the findings, at least in here. And while this one's very technical, I just don't have the time to kind of break down everything like I did in the last bit. All that to point out, in addition, CBD significantly ameliorated the increased LDH activity and decreased TER that were caused by inflammatory responses. So it seems like CBD helps reduce inflammation. It maintained the intestinal barrier by downregulating the expression of pro-inflammatory cytokines and tumor necrosis factors, thus exerting anti-inflammatory effects. So if you understand this better and can explain it for the layman's people in the comments, please help me out a little bit. I would appreciate it. As well, all these links will be in the comments if you wanted to review them. While from Science Direct, as of November 15th, 2024, so the future, clinical effectiveness of medical cannabis in patients with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis or ALS. And so some interesting highlights here, but I'll just bring you down to the abstract. And so we found medical cannabis use correlated with alleviation of pain, poor appetite, and anxiety in the short term, but not with spasticity or insomnia. Interesting. There was no correlation between medical cannabis use and BMI maintenance, which seems different than what we find with recreational cannabis use, which is interesting, worth studying further. However, notably, medical cannabis usage correlated with faster ALS progression, which certainly surprising and unexpected, hence why we ought to deschedule for more research, although patients using medical cannabis exhibited higher symptom burden and progressed faster than controls, even pre-medical cannabis prescription. So while it certainly helps people's symptoms, it does not seem to help ALS in any sort of way. So it seems we found one of the first conditions where cannabis does not seem to help the body at all and might actually be worse for someone with ALS. So certainly worth knowing. Let me know what you think in the comments, but we wouldn't know this if we wouldn't be able to study. And again, Schedule 1 has been the biggest barrier for that, sadly, over time. Well, last one from NPR and kind of led me down a rabbit hole, so I'm just going to go off on a bit of a tangent and you can either enjoy or not. But from NPR exclusive, U.S. overdose deaths plummet, saving thousands of lives. What do you think is the cause of this? Obviously, we likely share that cannabis being legalized for medical first and then recreational has likely had a large impact, especially based on a lot of studies we found, like this one in the past, JAMA Networks, as of October 2024, medical cannabis laws and opioid analgesic overdose mortality in the U.S. from 1999 to 2010. And what did this find? Medical cannabis laws are associated with significantly lower state-level opioid overdose mortality rates. Further investigation is required to determine how medical cannabis laws may interact with policies aimed at preventing opioid analgesic overdoses. And the percentage, 24.8% lower. So ideally, states with medical cannabis laws had essentially 25% lower annual opioid overdose rates than states without medical cannabis laws. That's the study that we had as of 2014, based on all the data that we had up until then. Now, what's interesting, of course, is this article mentions absolutely nothing of cannabis. And there's absolutely no word, no mention, or no inference of the likely leading cause of this amazing public health turnaround and victory of a 10% reduction in opioid overdoses reported by the Center of Disease and Control and Prevention, and that is thanks to the cannabis plant and ending cannabis prohibition. It just most likely is based on not only this study, which we'll get to, but I just got to highlight why this is also propaganda, because there's just a bunch of numbers coming out here that we don't know what's true or not, right? Now, all that to point out, we know that cannabis has never killed anybody, and I mean, honestly, I'd never heard of fentanyl until, say, 2018. So where the fuck did that come from, right? Clearly, that is the biggest driver of opioid overdoses. Now, what irks me the most is when I find this article here highlighting medical cannabis does not reduce opioid deaths. And this is from 2019, and this is basically a Stanford researcher and his team deciding, we found that 2014 study that said opioid overdoses went down by 25%. Let's try to replicate it and find the same thing, okay? Now note, this guy's name is Keith Humphreys, okay? Now we're going to jump back to this. With that said and known, who do you think NPR invited on as a researcher to discuss the potential reasons as to why opioid overdoses have gone down? You guessed it, not an honest researcher, as it's Dr. Keith Humphreys, the only clown in America who NPR claims as a nationally respected drug policy researcher at Stanford University, to find that legalizing cannabis increases opioid overdoses by 25%. And I mean, based on this article saying they're all going down, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then if we scroll up a little bit, They talked to this guy named Donaldson out of Vermont, saying him and his friends also use street drugs with others nearby, ready to offer aid and support when overdoses occur. Right? And so this guy Donaldson says his experience is reflected in data from the Vermont Department of Health, where cannabis is legal in Vermont, which shows a 22% decline in drug deaths in 2024. So right here is proof that a state that has ended cannabis prohibition has seen a 22% decline, and cannabis just happens to be legal for med and adult use. You cannot make this shit up. And so just wanted to point out, this is the one study that found the nonsense that legalizing cannabis increases opioid overdoses, and he makes such outrageous claims. Not only did findings from the original analysis not hold over the longer period, but the association between state medical cannabis laws and opioid overdose mortality reversed direction from negative 21% to plus 23%. How? If this whole article is saying they're down over time, like, it makes no sense. And so obviously I'm pretty rattled by this, and I'm happy to expose it, especially when he thinks we find it unlikely that medical cannabis, used by about 2.5% of the U.S. population, has exerted, completely ignoring recreational cannabis, completely ignoring how often people lie when they say if they've consumed something or not because of the status of illegality. Like, just probably the silliest attempt at propaganda in the last few years I have seen. And so all that to point out, I just wanted to bring you back to this article. I'm super happy to expose NPR as another branch of the giant bullshit propaganda machine trying to gaslight the American people to think that ending cannabis prohibition is not the giant success story and public health victory that it is. Thank you to the state-led growth story that chugs along in the background. Why the sudden and hopeful shift? Most experts say it's a mystery. Like, are you fucking kidding me? These experts are stupid, or they just don't think anymore because their job for so many years has consisted of, here's your answer, you're going to be asked a question, just say this, and you'll get your paycheck. And these clowns point to the rapid improvements in the availability and affordability of medical treatments for fentanyl addiction, such as the expansion of naloxone. Have they forgotten that cannabis is likely the best exit drug out there? So the expansion of medical and recreational cannabis is likely also the biggest driver that they conveniently leave out? I don't get it. Make it make sense, right? And then even more annoying, they bring identity politics into this, like, has nothing to do with it. Just end prohibition outright. And the discrimination should have happened 50 years ago, should have never even been allowed to happen in the first place. But then this is even funnier. But even researchers who support wider public health and harm reduction programs say it's unlikely those efforts alone are causing such a sudden decline. We don't have anything that would predict this magnitude of effects this quickly. I'm appalled. But this is the funniest part. Tops it all off. Obviously, fentanyl is not brought in by cannabis for the American people, right? And so if you target fentanyl and reduce that, that's going to have a large impact. But two more prime examples of how ending cannabis prohibition is the answer that they don't realize they're looking for. Ohio just launched for adult use last month, and we saw sales jump from 38 million to 84 million from August 6th to the end of August because they can buy rec. Oh, overdose deaths in Ohio are down by 31%. What do you know? They've had medical for years. And then even funnier, Missouri is seeing a similar trend that appears to be accelerating. After dropping by 10% last year, preliminary data shows drug deaths in the state have now fallen roughly 34%. We know Missouri is one of the hottest markets for med and adult use. You cannot make this shit up. And so obviously NPR doesn't want you to know the reality, but the reason why opioid overdose deaths are falling is thanks to the beautiful medical cannabis plant. And so just to bring it back to the last study that we had as of 2024, recreational and medical cannabis legalization and opioid prescriptions and mortality. To shut up that clown, whatever his name is, we shall not speak it because he doesn't deserve it to be spoken, meaning the study results suggest that recreational and medical cannabis legalization were not associated with significant increases or decreases in opioid prescriptions. Now, fair enough, they say that, but it certainly has helped more than it hasn't. And fatal overdose, with the exception of a possible reduction in synthetic opioid deaths that was associated with recreational cannabis law implementation. And just with that, wanted to share this from CDC, 12 months ending provisional number of percentage change of drug overdose deaths. This is, of course, the number from 2015 up until 2024. So we saw this come down as well. This is likely where fentanyl got introduced. This is where more and more people are being prescribed opioids, and Big Pharma made a killing before they got their next opportunity to make a killing from the pandemic. And all that to point out, what was the other thing I wanted to highlight? There was one other review that I could pull up here. What was it? Oh yeah, this thing. Just to highlight, what are the drugs responsible? Oh yeah, okay, cocaine, heroin, methadone, opioids. Opioids, okay. Where's cannabis on this list? Huh? Right? Nowhere to be found. Make it make sense. Absolute bullshit. And so the final study turns out cannabis can kill something, but fortunately it's not humans. It might end up being mosquitoes. From MDPI, larvicidal activity of hemp extracts and cannabidiol against the yellow fever mosquito. Aedes aegypti, I probably butchered that, published July 10th, 2024. It's a very technical one, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know whether it would kill mosquitoes or just keep them away sort of thing. All that to point out, we conclude that hemp leaf extracts and CBD have the potential to serve as viable sources for the development of novel mosquito larvicides. So imagine having mosquito or bug spray made from hemp or cannabis extracts. So obviously, so much more to learn once we get it out of the bullshit Schedule 1 where it never belonged in the first place. But on to other state news. Out of California, as Newsom's controversial hemp ban approved effective immediately. Now keep in mind, it's only controversial if you don't know the difference between hemp-derived THC, which usually has a lot of synthetics that aren't tested and usually unhealthy and lead to unintended consequences, versus the THC Delta 9 that you get out of the medicinal cannabis plant sold out of legal adult use dispensaries. And so we don't know what this will mean, but only time will tell whether this new crackdown will have an impact on the hemp sales or hemp-derived sales versus the legal sales. Of course, if you wanted the legal sales to do even better, you would open more and more dispensaries, because California's got 40 million people and only 1,000 shops. You need way more shops to properly supply the demand. And for that reason, in the meantime, not enough shops, and this bullshit product being sold through gas stations, easily accessible to kids and all that, hence why they had to bring that ban in, because those products are not safe. Better to bring the ban in and reduce access to it, at least until we can study more and find out, what these other synthetic compounds in the hemp-derived THC also does to the human body. But full link in the comments if you want to go through that. Time will tell, and I will update you. Well, happy to share, not even happy to share, I'm embarrassed to share that Tilray took this many years to finally introduce the Delta 9 THC drinks in key markets across the US. But better late than never, they're leveraging the hemp and beverage scale to launch. And again, this is hemp-derived Delta 9 THC. I don't get it. Please explain in the comments, because this just makes me feel more and more dumb. But if hemp-derived THC, from my understanding, was Delta 8 and includes other synthetics, whereas Delta 9 THC is typically the THC derived from the medicinal cannabis plant. Is it possible to derive Delta 9 compounds that you get in the cannabis plant from hemp without the other synthetics that could have unintended consequences? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. But as a shareholder of Tilray for a long time, mainly because I owned Afria, I would love this to be a beneficial and profitable thing for them. They need it more now than ever. I just get more and more confused as to why they haven't tried to take advantage of this and why they've waited until now. But let me know what you think in the comments and any insights you guys can provide, because, of course, I'm not in the U.S., so I don't see any of this in real time. But I do wish them luck, as that would make me money if Tilray would turn shit around for once. Wow, just a reminder from Jungle Java that 1 year ago today, the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs passed the Safer Banking Act bill out of a committee by a vote of 14-9. So all that needed then was from the Senate Majority Leader Schmuck Schumer to put it on the Senate floor for a vote when it has had the votes for the past 2-3 years, and it would pass. And so for anyone that's thinking, oh, well, the Dems are going to champion cannabis. No, never, not a chance. Well, the Republicans, I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't even require either of them because of what the DOJ and the DA are doing in the background, rescheduling cannabis to Schedule 3. All that to point out, politicians are the enemy of the people and have certainly been the enemy of the plant. And so should not have trusted them up until now. We've learned our lesson. We shall never trust politicians going forward after all this. Well, wanted to share this update from Jesse Redmond. A personal one for him, but one that could be some sort of foreshadowing for what's to come. As Reynolds American Inc., the second largest tobacco company in the U.S., is hiring a director finance lead for its cannabis division. A recruiter recently contacted him about an opportunity to manage the cannabis efforts for another large tobacco company. And folks are getting their ducks in a row ahead of what may be an exciting 2025. Well, it's hard to get excited for cannabis because 2020 to 2024 has been such an abysmal letdown because of the Dems, their lip service, and their virtue signaling, and that teaches us never to trust politicians. There is a lot to be excited for, especially when you don't need the politicians to finalize Schedule 3. That's the DOJ, that's the DEA. The politicians are just, the puppets out front that for us to get mad and emotionally attached to. And so, interesting though, if you wanted to check out that job description, I invite any of you to apply. Maybe you'll get lucky and get it. I might even consider taking a look at it. But good question down here as well, I think. Do you think the catalyst is the legislation that Wyden just introduced? And Jesse says, nope, the rules were posted before Wyden. It's Schedule 3 and all other things we dream of. Garland, safer, legalization. And I would love for that to be the case, but I'm not holding my breath on Garland. And I mean, I would hope to see safer, but seriously, what makes us think that it's actually coming? But there's more good news, as the Wyden Bill sets the stage for big alcohol to finally enter the cannabis space, according to Anthony Varell. So take from that what you will. Alcohol producers need an FDA label on the package to ensure that all bases are covered to get behind the products. This bill is the roadmap to that. The barbarians are at the gate. Do you agree or do you disagree? Let me know in the comments what you think. Now, of course, if you are not well-versed or unaware of the the whole hemp and cannabis discrepancy. This is a cool video worth watching. Definitely recommend tuning in. It's not a well-known account, got a decent amount of views, but certainly a good documentary just looking at real-world examples of people. In Florida, I'm pretty sure that's where the whole thing was based, but giving them cannabis products and then hemp-derived products and asking them to judge the difference. And all that to point out, I didn't go through the details of this bill, but this was the new one introduced by Senator Wyden. Sadly, I'm not that smart or that good at digging for a lot of these things, so hopefully some of you guys can help me put the pieces together in the comments. But while this was introduced by Senator Ron Wyden earlier this week, there was another bill introduced by Senator Rand Paul, which is called the Hemp Act of 2024. And so this bill follows the hemp legislation introduced earlier this week by Senator Ron Wyden. So let's hope that this legislation is what we've always needed in order to get cannabis maybe descheduled or, some other wild card we weren't expecting, because this is coming out of nowhere. But what's worth noting is that this new Hemp Act of 2024 would increase the amount of THC available in legal hemp. So Paul's legislation would amend the THC limit for hemp from 0.3% to 1%. Additionally, to help prevent legal hemp from being seized during transport, the bill requires that hemp shipments be accompanied by one of two easily accessible types of documentation. So long ways out from these being passed at all, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of back and forth, but just wanted to share this as some new developments could be making the situation a little bit spicier. And we will find out, and once we do, I will update you all. But this seems to be the bill that Rand Paul introduced himself. Well, last few stories, H.L. Mencken on the Wyden bill that he introduced. Now, again, I'm not sure if this is true or not, so take it with a grain of salt, and please let me know in the comments if you're smarter than me or if you can interpret it better, what you think this could mean. But he says right here, if this is passed without descheduling in parallel, the hemp farm bill loophole will be closed, which means the hemp-derived gas station synthetic weed would no longer be legal as it is as of right now, according to him. This appears to be written for a world that cannabis is fully descheduled. And I'm still praying for a wild card descheduling from Clarence Thomas and the Supreme Court. I don't think we're likely going to get it, but I fucking can keep praying and crossing my fingers for it. Fascinating read-through and hilarious that the fanfare on Twitter is pretty muted. And so take from that what you will, but basically he thinks this little bit right here is par for pretty much outright descheduling. Screenshot is in response to what the Cole memo answered down here. Basically, though, it started with the Dales report sharing this story from Marijuana Moment, saying the Wyden bill could be the most sensible thing we have seen in regards to regulating hemp. And then he asks, am I missing something? Why is it specifically for hemp? And then Cole memo responds. He asks another question. Cole memo responds again. And that's basically where we're at. And so one more detail to highlight why ending cannabis prohibition is obviously a public health victory that sadly no U.S. officials want to talk about. Nearly 6 years after legalization in Canada, over 70% of cannabis sales come from licensed sources. On top of that, 2024 alone, sales from legal outlets are set to reach almost $5 billion, which is impressive. Now, sadly, Canada's gone down the shitter in the last 10 years, but the one victory we likely have is ending cannabis prohibition. Everything else has pretty much gotten shittier, so it's just really great that we have cannabis. But sadly, since this one lone victory from Trudeau, all he's done is implement more socialist, and then since the pandemic, more fascist policy, and ultimately we're just trying to call a no confidence vote and get an election to get him the fuck out of there so we can start working on reversing 5 to 8 years of terrible fucking policy. And so with that, last one to highlight on a good note from Jesse Redmond. Today is a good day, every day is a good day, knowing scheduling appears on track and the ALJ hearing is 66 days away. Even before that, number 2, according to Polymarket, Florida's Amendment 3 has an 80% probability of passing, and the vote is only 39 days away. So in 39 days away, we will know whether or not we should even be excited for December, based on what happens in Florida, but odds are in our favor. And number 3, cannabis stocks are just 7% institutionally owned. That's crazy, compared to 77% for a basket of top tobacco and alcohol stocks. S3 in Florida will increase institutional involvement tremendously. And all we can do is try and keep our spirits high, enjoy ourselves, and plan accordingly for our own situations until then. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you next week for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.